I love statistics and data. You know that ad on television for AGL Gas? There's the geek who's at the barbecue and they say, what do you do? And he says, I'm with AGL, I provide gas. Do you know the ad I mean? And he goes, well, I get excited. Well, my staff, I get new data arrive in the email from different reports and things, and my staff sit there going, she's the only person who gets so excited when more statistics arrive. So it keeps me on time and I don't talk too much. There's another index called an ARIA index, which is a really interesting one, I think. It measures road distances between populated localities, so towns like Sale, Bairnsdale, smaller towns like Omeo, Mallacoota, Pakenham, Berwick, back into Melbourne, and service centres, so Traralgon, Morwell. And the higher the score, the more remote the local government area, LGA is local government area, the Shire. So we have 6 shires in Gippsland, and that's obviously the centre of the universe. The Trove City, not too remote. Bass Coast, not too remote. Baw Shire, getting worse. South Gippsland Shire. I mean, it just follows the state, doesn't it? Wellington. And out of every local government area in Victoria, East Gippsland is considered to be the most remote. It's more remote than Swan Hill, it's more remote than Mildura, it's more remote than Warrnambool, it's more remote than Horsham. That has implications for how Federation Training thinks about training delivery. Connectivity. In the regional partnership, we think of this in 2 ways. One is access to transport, and the other is access to the digital world, to internet. Now, the journey to work, this again really shows up, and just worry about the colours. How do people travel? If you have access to really great public transport, if we had a rocket train on the hour, every hour, from Mallacoota to Melbourne, 200k an hour, fantastic. If we had trains and buses and automatic taxi services, driverless vehicles up and down to Leongatha, that'd be great. We don't have that. So if we did have wonderful public transport, lots and lots of access to transport alternatives, we would expect to see a lot more different colours, colour variations that we're seeing at this top end. But if you think of this as 100% coming along the bars, over 80% against trains, trams, public transport, however else people can travel. In Gippsland, people drive. Pale blue. It's as simple as that. Access to transport is very, very limited. And if you don't have a car, if you can't afford a car, or if you can't afford the petrol for a car, your access to transport is even further limited. Internet connection, again, really interesting. Melbourne's at the top. Orange is broadband. Blue is all kinds of internet, so that's off your phone or however else you connect. So obviously the best, the closest. Gippsland's sitting in the middle. A lot more people are connecting via different devices, for example smartphones, than they are via broadband. And if you think about the NBN rollout, it's incredibly patchy. Okay, let's think about education a little bit. This is your business and you know heaps, but just a bit of a thought. Now this is the oldest of the data, unfortunately, and I am so looking forward to the 1st of July when we can log on and see how things have changed. So as of the last census, 36% of adults in Gippsland could say they had Year 12. That's pretty low. But it's very low. 79% of adults had completed years 10 and 11. That's much better, but it's not great. Now, the completion rate for 19-year-olds in the last 5 years has increased considerably. So our schools are getting better and better at keeping young people all the way through to Year 12 and completing Year 12, because 77% of our young people aged 19 now complete Year 12, compared to 36% of adults across the whole region 5 years ago. That's a huge turnaround, and it's a real, bonus for the region. The challenge is that if this is metropolitan Melbourne here, with over 90% of 19-year-olds getting their Year 12 in 2014, Gippsland's at the bottom. The highest level of schooling attained, again, just look at the colours. Orange, Year 12 or equivalent across the region. Now this is 2011. Blue, Year 11 or equivalent. Purple, Year 9, 10. And then it sort of fades off. And then people who we're losing. Tertiary education is made up of 2 parts, and really doesn't matter what papers you read. Everyone sort of gets this a little bit confused, so you need to go with the flow. You've got primary school, secondary school, and anything after that is tertiary. Tertiary is made up of 2 parts: higher education, university, and vocational education. Our school leavers in 2012, so again this is older data, but I don't think the pattern will have changed hugely in this area, has us sitting here at under 20% of Year 12 leavers going through to university. So it's not what our kids do when they leave school. And here we have the highest number in the state for regional areas of young people who leave school, go through and do a certificate. Now what this doesn't show is whether they're doing certificate 1 and 2, or if they're doing Cert 3, Cert 4 diploma. Okay, so we are really, really high. Advanced diplomas, we sit about average. Here's the bachelor degree again. We're really low. Okay, purple is Victoria. So I'll come back for you. This bottom one, purple, is Victoria, so we're sitting well under the Victorian average. And then when it comes to graduate studies or doctoral studies, it just doesn't count for Gippsland. Now, this doesn't have such a high implication for the TAFE, but the bottom 2 certainly have implications for Federation University down the road. Because we know that kids who do leave and want to go to university, and they travel up the road and they keep going to Melbourne, they don't tend to veer off to the south here. So I guess the thinking around what happened, or why is that of interest to Federation training, if you're looking at building pathways between courses and partnering with the university in some areas to build pathways into higher qualifications that might be needed by some industries, it's harder and trickier to capture people because they're not going to Fed Uni. Not from here anyway. We're getting numbers coming in from Berwick, Pakenham people, kids coming the other way, out to Churchill, but not from this way. Once they're on the train, they're heading up the road, they keep going. Our tertiary enrolments, so this is higher education and VET. The The university ones are here, and just looking at where people want to enrol, what industry areas, what types of courses. 31% into management and commerce, so a business focus. What else can I pick out? Health, 12%. And that's going to be the doctors, the nurses, education, less than 10%. Engineering, 7%. Information technology. The world is changing, it's all going digital, but only 5% of university enrolments in this space. Looking at enrolments by industry in vet, healthcare, 20%. A lot more professions, a lot more possibility. Construction is the next highest. Now Gippsland again is orange. The grey lines, if you can see the grey lines, are Victoria. So we're right up there. Construction. Gippsland's been really interesting over the last 5 years. In the construction area, where the bottom fell out of training in almost every region, almost without a change, Gippsland's the one that in comparison held up apprenticeships and training in construction. So we've still got employers who were building and the industry was ticking along. If I look at something like around the Warrnambool area, it dropped down to almost zero. So we're quite unusual there. Another area we're really unusual, look, here's Victoria, this tiny little block, and we're nearly up to 10% in agriculture, forestry and fishing. So our training's way up in that space. Our foundation skills, here we're low, we're really low. This is Victoria, out to 15–16%, and we're sitting at about 8%. I don't know exactly why, but I'd make a guess, and it's got something to do with we have very little English as a second language, very little languages other than English in the region as a whole. It's a guess. But we tend to have a fairly monocultural community in Gippsland if I compare it to, say, Brunswick or, the middle of Melbourne. Now, thinking about the economy itself, how do we use our land? Orange, agriculture. The whole of Gippsland tends to be agriculture where we're actively using land. But everywhere else, look at this, it's agriculture. It's madly agriculture. Purple is residential. So Latrobe, Bass Coast, Wellington's quite high. 20% of the land in Wellington is residential. And then the other grey areas, the pale grey, really quite small, is commercial. So we don't live in a region, we're still talking about this huge region. We don't live in a region that has enormous amounts of commercial or industrial activity. Proportionately, it's very, very small. Kind of goes with what I was saying about living in small towns. Okay. But it makes it difficult for thinking about training needs and how you meet training needs and how you think about scaling up classes to make them financially secure. Our industry structure is interesting because our largest industries, in terms of dollar value to the region, are our smallest employing industries. That's really problematic for planning. So by a long shot, mining returns the greatest dollar value to the region. But if you think of the gas plants, does anyone from Sale? I know there's a couple. If you think of, out at Longford gas plant, huge infrastructure, huge value to the state of Victoria, huge value to Gippsland, a work crew of 20 or 30 people, mainly automated. Our largest industries in terms of jobs: agriculture, forestry and fishing, retail trade, healthcare and social assistance. And that shouldn't be overly surprising because we already know most of our land use goes around the ag, forestry and fishing use, because we know that we have small businesses. I haven't talked about that. Small business is our predominant business base. Roughly 85% of all businesses in Gippsland employ 5 or less people. Healthcare and social assistance kind of goes with this idea of the ageing population and of where advantage is and where disadvantage is. So just looking at the gross value, the dollar mark where our industries work: mining, agriculture, construction, oil, water, gas, electricity, healthcare, some manufacturing, retail trade. And they line up with your 6 areas in the strategic plan for the TAFE. So it makes good sense. Employment by industry: top employers, agriculture. Retail trade is the second highest employing sector. Healthcare and social assistance, construction, education and training, manufacturing, accommodation and food services, public administration, so local government. They pretty much line up with your strategic plan. But one of the things to think about in that space has been the government's setting for training and for subsidised training support over the last few years in areas like retail trade, hospitality, where they cut the subsidies right back and expected people to want to train or to pay to train. So that's got enormous implications for you when you're thinking about training delivery. If you look at retail trade, it's a great example. We know that most retail traders are in small businesses, 5 or less employees. We know that they work Monday to Friday, and if they're a sole trader or 1 or 2 people, they need to keep the shop open to do the business. So how do they take time out to trade, or to train rather? Particularly if they have to pay. It's got a real problem for you guys on how you reach them. The employment growth is, so this is our baseline is sitting along here. And if we say from 2005 to 2015, which are the areas where the jobs are growing? Remember I talked before about the importance of jobs growing if we're going to get young people to get jobs? Yeah? Okay, where the jobs are growing: agriculture, forestry and fishing. They've grown by 50% over the last 10 years. Accommodation and food services, so the tourism or visitor economy, growing. Construction has grown. Healthcare has grown. Government has grown. Retail trade has gone backwards. We're into negative territory here. Education and training, no surprises for anyone in this room. And manufacturing has really dropped back. Labour force participation, this is one that kind of gets me hot under the collar, because in the Australian Bureau of Statistics, and when you watch the news at night, it tells you that the jobs forecasts have come out and they're looking glossy and there have been 10,000 new jobs in a month. If you have a job for an hour or more a week, you are considered to be employed. That's what keeps the numbers rising and looking fantastic. Our participation rate has fallen significantly over the last 3 or 4 years. And against the Victorian average, our participation is lower. And that is both in unemployment terms and in the number of people who are underemployed. So part-time work, but they like or need more. The Gippsland is sitting here with 61% participation in 2016. That's not too bad, I guess. We're in the middle, but it does mean that 40% aren't participating, 40% of people aren't participating. And for younger people, we're up quite a bit higher, around the 12 to 13% mark of people who are, or young people who are unemployed, who are seeking employment. Now, in some ways we're kind of doing okay, because if you look at the west of the state, their youth unemployment rates are up over 20%, around 22 to 24%. 1 in 4 young people who leave school can't get work. We're a little bit less. I still don't think it's anything to brag about though. Occupations. We're really strong. Victoria is purple, regional Victoria is the grey, and we're the orange. Really strong on trades workers, technicians. And that sort of lines up with the qualifications and the strength we have around delivering certificate courses. Sales workers, we've got lots of them. Professionals, Victoria, regional Victoria, and Gippsland. Now you can probably work out what's happening here. One is that they tend to cluster in Melbourne, so the Victorian results are skewed, and you would expect that to be the highest. Second one, regional Victoria. If you think about Ballarat, Bendigo, Geelong, we don't have a major centre anywhere near that size where you would get those professions clustering. We've talked before about having smaller towns, and also I think everyone would either have experienced or know the story of people who, they want to move from Melbourne, come for a regional life. One of the partners gets a job, the second one doesn't. It's a bit harder. So we tend to lose out on some professional skills there. And we don't have that base of industry, base of business for kids who want to leave home, go and get a university degree, come back and practice as an accountant, a stockbroker or whatever in the professions. They tend to stay in Melbourne because that's where the jobs are. That is why that shape is the way it is. We've got managers, we have machinery operators and drivers, probably less than you might have expected. And that's an area that is decreasing because we're seeing so much more automation. Labourers, we've got lots. Probably links in a little bit with construction and some of our other areas that are in that trade space. Community and personal service workers, we've got lots. Clerical and admin, less than Victoria, little bit less than regional Victoria. And again, this is this Melbourne cluster. Our economic growth, these are the sorts of things you see on TV, on the news. And the one I really want to look at is really around participation. Our gross regional product is the dollar value of what we put out compared to regional Victoria as a whole. I'm not terribly worried about that. Our working age population, quite small compared to regional Victoria. Our participation rate is the one I'm interested in. The proportion of people that we have participating is just marginal, and the hours work has been dropping back. Remember I talked before about the casualisation of workforce in a lot of sectors? Okay. Well, there's the proof of the pudding. And it's particularly hit Gippsland, where that's the whole of Victoria. So we've really lost our full-time jobs. And then labour productivity is, do we work smart? Well, in fact, we do. In Gippsland, our workers are much more, well, at least, I think it's 0.25%, tiny. It's a bit like looking at interest rate percentages. We are considerably more productive than workers in other parts of Victoria. We don't get rewarded for it in terms of hours worked. So what we're seeing is employers not building extra jobs. They're cutting the work time back, and we're just doing more with less.